They called it a strategic summit. Dinner on a yacht, with hand-selected wine and delicacies, but anyone who'd survived the corporate tide long enough could smell a firing from miles away. Especially when it was served like a spectacle, polished to perfection, with laughter and champagne masking intentions. This story is for anyone who's ever been quietly removed from the board they built, only to return with the final, decisive move. Stay with me. I stood at the stern, Manhattan skyline shimmering like glass behind me, the chill of October brushing my face, the wind tugging at my coat as if warning me to step lightly. Inside, a smooth jazz trio played, waiters floated past carrying oysters and champagne, and somewhere near the captain's table, Liam Hawthorne, the newly appointed CEO, was grinning widely. The kind of smile that tried too hard to appear genuine. I wasn't supposed to be here tonight. My invitation had been accidentally left off the final guest list. It wasn't until my assistant noticed the list pinned in a Slack thread that I realized I could attend. I made my decision instantly: black silk dress, sharp heels, nothing to lose, a confidence built on years of experience and countless battles fought in boardrooms and server rooms alike. I had spent 18 years building the digital backbone of Meridian Metrics from scratch, watching it rise from a fledgling startup into a multinational powerhouse. When the company faced a security breach that could have cost millions, I was the one who held the line. When competitors tried to hijack our contracts, I rewrote the entire infrastructure to protect the firm. Quietly. Without fanfare. Without ever asking for the corner office I deserved. So when Liam raised his glass, announcing the next era of the company, I already had a sense of where it was heading, but nothing prepared me for the twist that followed, the subtle but unmistakable shift in power that would signal the beginning of my erasure. Everyone, he said, placing a hand on the shoulder of the young woman beside him. Meet Harper Hawthorne, our new Chief Strategy Officer. Harper, his niece, freshly out of a Silicon Valley executive boot camp, dressed in a white power suit, her hair immaculate, glowing like an advertisement for efficiency and youth. She clinked her glass against his, announcing, "Time for some fresh perspectives here." And then came the line that told me everything: "Eli has laid an incredible foundation, but now we build upward." I nodded, smiled politely, let them toast. They didn't think to consider, that the entire security framework they celebrated had my fingerprints embedded deep into its core, that every access log, every encrypted handshake, every silent safeguard had been painstakingly constructed by me over nearly 2 decades. The next morning, I arrived at the office before dawn, earlier than usual. The building was half asleep, only the cleaning crew moving about, fluorescent lights humming. No announcement had been made. No farewell email. Just subtle avoidance in people's eyes. I didn't speak. I walked the floor as I always did, coffee in hand, pausing only to notice my office nameplate had vanished. Quiet. Efficient. Corporate. The absence of my name felt heavier than I expected. I stepped inside anyway. My credentials still worked. I didn't flinch. I knew better than to question decisions already made in rooms where I wasn't invited. Instead, I opened the admin console, downloaded every version of the security framework I'd built since 2010. Archived system protocols, saved internal emails, copied contracts, and accessed the legacy server. Then I did what they'd never remember: revoked all hidden superuser privileges I had quietly created over the years. And I left a gift behind, not a virus, nothing illegal. Just documented proof of ownership, timestamped and immutable, tucked into a private developer node labeled V1 Core Foundation. On my way out, I passed the lobby screen displaying client logos. Firms we had earned through trust flashed by. Names, late nights, precision work, all still intact in memory. Outside, the October wind hit hard, sharper than expected. I inhaled deeply, letting the cold sting my lungs, and kept walking, every step deliberate, measured, confident. I didn't slam doors. I didn't post a dramatic LinkedIn farewell. They could assume I left empty-handed. But the truth was, I was leaving with more than they imagined. Not just the code, not just the blueprints, not even my 6% stake. I carried clarity, leverage they had long forgotten. It took only 4 days for the cracks to appear. Subtle at first, minor issues, nothing dramatic. Tokyo flagged an authentication failure in the client dashboard. I knew that dashboard intimately. It didn't fail by accident, it failed because someone tampered with back-end security tokens they didn't fully understand. By Friday, more alerts arrived. Integration failures, latency issues, encryption rollbacks. None catastrophic yet, but all familiar. I had spent over a decade maintaining that system with discipline, not duct tape, and watching it slowly unravel from a distance brought a quiet satisfaction. Every tool followed rules, every rule a purpose. Now, with a new perspective at the Helm, they were rearranging systems like decorative tiles. Harper, with all her curated confidence, held the first agile innovation sprint. 30 underpaid engineers raced against artificial deadlines to impress someone who had never built a scalable system herself. I observed from my home monitor the public-facing code available, and I saw the dominoes before they did. One of the modules, an open-source predictive plugin Harper insisted they push, was flagged by 2 external partners for compliance concerns. Data classification issues, non-conformity with GDPR. They hadn't even tested it in Sandbox, but still hadn't called me. They assumed it could be fixed, naively. Confidence in the wrong hands, nothing unravels faster. I waited. I went on with my days, cooking dinner, watering my plants, taking long walks while the slow trickle of alerts reached me, and all the while, one thought remained: they have no idea where the real break is yet. The first emergency meeting was called on a Tuesday, hastily scheduled, poorly attended, with a tense air that felt almost tangible. Harper stood at the head of the table, Sharpie in hand, a glossy slide deck titled Forward System Realignment projected. Behind her, half the room nodded without understanding the root problem. She spoke of legacy friction, carefully avoiding the word architecture, instead framing it as organizational inertia. It was a classic redirection: blame the structure, not the architect. They flew in consultants from Boston, people with polished buzzwords and frameworks that looked impressive on paper but crumbled under the weight of actual infrastructure. Within days, new bugs emerged. Client dashboards slowed. Predictive models returned null data. And still, my name remained unspoken. Yet in the fleeting glances of 2 senior managers, I saw it, the brief flicker of doubt, the whisper of maybe we underestimated her. I didn't reach out. I didn't gloat. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table one night, staring at the chipped ceramic mug from our first product launch in 2011. Faded letters, coffee stains long set. I remembered the long nights of rewriting encryption protocols for that first federal audit, the hours spent debugging while the office slept. My name never appeared on the press releases. Never needed to. But every line of code, every safeguard now being overwritten, bore my signature in silent testimony. They scrambled. A patch here, a new hire there, a full data governance team formed in a week. But none of it worked. You can't replace understanding with urgency. Panic, dressed as productivity, spread through the office. On Thursday, a private client flagged a serious concern: an automated report misfired, sending classified trend data to the wrong recipient. Compliance got involved. Legal was looped in. Still, no one called me. But the murmurs had started. I felt the pressure build like water seeping through a foundation. And behind all the noise, one truth remained: you cannot restructure what you do not understand. The first call came from HR, polite, clipped, performative concern masquerading as interest. They wanted to discuss a short-term advisory role, legacy knowledge, smooth transition, the usual euphemisms. I let her talk. The second call came from Liam himself. Straight to voicemail. Then came the email: support during transition, your insights matter. There it was. Not regret. Not apology. Just fear, wrapped lightly in flattery. I didn't respond. I archived it in a private folder labeled "When They Flinch." That week, Harper hosted another meeting, another presentation, another set of promises. But this time, the room wasn't nodding automatically. Quiet questions arose. Then more pointed ones. One manager asked whether the recent compliance breach was isolated. Another inquired why back-end monitoring reports hadn't been sent in over a week. Harper brushed it off with her usual composed confidence. But I recognized the subtle tightening of jaws, the nervous glance toward the CEO. The invisible line between certainty and unraveling. That weekend, I traveled to Chicago to meet with the director of infrastructure at a major cloud provider. We were collaborating on a pilot program I had quietly joined after leaving Meridian Metrics. They didn't want my input alone, they wanted me. By the time I returned home, another message awaited: Harper. Short, casual. Hope you're well. Would you like to grab coffee? I'd love your perspective on the system handoff. I read it, paused, then typed 4 words: I'm with a client. Hit send. No cruelty, just honesty. They had treated me like a relic until their shiny new system began to crack. Now they were reaching out, but I had already moved beyond the battlefield they left me on. Have you ever walked away quietly, only to have the very people who erased you come searching again? And when they do, are you already too far ahead to care? I didn't block calls. Didn't need revenge. I just kept building. From home offices and quiet servers, I ran diagnostics, reviewed integration proposals, advised on strategic roadmaps, each move methodical, efficient, invisible. Meanwhile, panic within Meridian Metrics deepened. Vanessa, head of operations, turned in her resignation on a Monday morning. Clean, professional, 2 weeks' notice. She had been the glue, unshakable, with a decade of experience handling crisis logistics and vendor transitions. Within 3 days, 2 more key figures left. Louise, from back-end architecture, moved to a cybersecurity firm in Austin. Helena, client services lead, quietly joined a competitor. Market churn, HR called it. But internally, the message was clear: evacuation. And still, no one mentioned me. But I could see the shift in tone from board meeting minutes and private notes, structural instability, talent retention risk creeping into documents that used to be full of vision and innovation. Harper doubled down, hosting a webinar titled The Path Forward, preaching resilience and growth. The room blinked too often, smiled too hard. Client support tickets piled up. The back-end team, cobbled together from temp hires and interns, couldn't stabilize core systems. Predictive models failed. Frustration grew. From my quiet home setup, consulting simultaneously for 3 firms, I observed the unfolding chaos. Logs, diagnostics, integration checks, I saw every gap, every misstep. No coffee-fueled damage control. No dramatic meetings. Just structure, clarity, and the quiet satisfaction of watching a system that couldn't survive in inexperienced hands begin to falter. Late on a Thursday evening, Vanessa called me from her apartment overlooking the river. Her voice was calm, but her words carried an unmistakable tension. "They're asking questions," she said. "The board noticed that Harper's metrics aren't aligning. And Liam, he's absent. Not officially, but he's stopped attending internal stand-ups. There's talk of a quiet leadership reset." I didn't react. Silence, I knew, was often the loudest response. "You think they'll reach out?" she asked. I glanced at the unread message from Meridian Metrics interim board chair, flagged urgent. They already had. But the storm hadn't broken me, it had cleared the sky around me. It wasn't a whistleblower incident. It was a leak. An anonymous file sent to the press, copied to half the board, buried in metadata screenshots from a leadership retreat presentation labeled Talent Optimization. Slide 9 read, Eliminate Legacy Roles. EC Resistance to Culture Shift. The initials weren't subtle, neither was the intent. For months, the narrative had been natural. Transition. My departure was presented as a new chapter. But the evidence made it clear: strategic removal. Not because I had failed, but because I wasn't flashy enough for their rebrand. Too seasoned. Too stable. Too much a reminder of the company's foundations. They had forgotten one detail. I had receipts. Legal documentation, notarized and timestamped, proving my contributions to Meridian Metrics. Proprietary security framework. From the earliest system launch in 2010 to every infrastructure upgrade over a decade, the records bore my name: Eli Carter, original creator and systems architect of 3 key data protection layers still active today. Within 72 hours, their legal team requested a private discussion. I declined. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was deliberate. Let the news circulate. Let clients ask questions. Let partners wonder what had been buried beneath rebranding efforts. And let Liam and Harper sit with it, not for humiliation, but for understanding that some foundations aren't meant to be painted over. They are meant to be respected. The board convened a closed session. No press. No recording. 15 people in a room watching a company fray at its edges. I wasn't invited, not officially. Yet halfway through, one director pulled out a thick folder. Inside, copies of IP filings, source code lineage, architectural diagrams, all traced back to one name. "Mine," whispered someone, incredulous. The room went quiet. "What are we using that we don't own?" another asked. "Technically, we still had operating rights," someone murmured. But the chair clarified, "Not protections. Not if the creator decides to revoke them." That was the shift. Not scandal, not rage, uncertainty. The kind that makes investors pause, acquisition partners reconsider, and internal confidence crumble. Technova's interest in a merger hadn't disappeared. But now, they began asking the questions that mattered: who truly understood the systems? Who had built them? Who could be trusted to maintain them during a transition? The formal proposal came, not from Meridian Metrics, but from Technova, a structured merger contingent on a neutral transitional advisory panel to oversee integration. And the condition? I would chair it. Not as an employee, not as a returning executive, but as an autonomous consultant, backed by Technova's legal and acquisition framework. I didn't blink. Acceptance was quiet, deliberate. My first act wasn't dramatic. No one was fired. No one publicly embarrassed. I simply redrew the map, split functions by competency, not politics, reinstated system documentation protocols, froze all front-end modifications until back-end compliance was complete. Memo to every department head, effective immediately, all system modifications require review. 4. Coherence, not control. Silence followed. No applause, no headlines. Yet I felt the shift. Liam stepped down within a week, citing strategic exhaustion. Harper was reassigned to an innovation sandbox, far from mission-critical systems. Me? I didn't move into a corner office. My seat was at the center, not of status, but of structure. I wasn't rebuilding the company. I was rebalancing it. Quietly. Precisely. Without bitterness. Because power isn't about titles. It's about knowing what holds the walls up, and being the only one who remembers. I didn't return to my old office. Once, an intern asked why. "You'd want the window view again, right?" he said. I just smiled. Some offices are for building things. Others are for remembering what you built. Instead, I worked from the strategy room. Whiteboards, fiber optics, and a locked door. Only I had the codes to rebuild Meridian Metrics into what it should be. We rebuilt it into a system that was functional, adaptable, and egoless. No press releases. No ceremonies. Yet the board quietly extended my contract another year. Vanessa returned as COO, full-time. Louise rejoined on the systems side under a hybrid CTO model. Loyalty wasn't discussed. Systems that respect the people who uphold them, that was the conversation. By spring, Phoenix Capital finalized the acquisition. Not a hostile takeover, but a methodical handoff. The transition team included 3 of my former analysts, a new security director I had personally mentored, and 1 junior operations associate who had once stayed late to fix a reporting error no one noticed. I had quietly invited her to the audit team. She cried in the hallway, saying no one had ever recognized her work. I simply nodded. "You did it right," I told her. That's all that mattered. The merger proceeded silently, efficiently. Every procedural step, every audit, every handoff was documented and verified. I wasn't there to control, to impress, or to seek recognition. I was there to ensure continuity. To make sure that what had been built would endure. The beauty of quiet power is that it doesn't announce itself, it manifests in stability, in systems that hum seamlessly even when the world assumes chaos reigns. By midsummer, I stepped back officially. I didn't vanish, I became what I had always been, the invisible architect behind the systems. My laptop still hummed each morning on the kitchen counter beside the chipped mug from our launch year. I logged in, skimmed tickets, checked logs, not because I had to, but because I cared. Because the continuity of what I built was its own reward. Clients noticed the difference, even if they didn't know why. Systems ran smoother, integrations aligned perfectly, data flows were precise and accurate. No one in the office knew who had orchestrated the stability behind the scenes. Vanessa, Louise, and the hybrid CTO system team handled daily operations. My guidance was behind the curtains, in private calls, and encrypted memos. It was invisible, but crucial. Meanwhile, the ripple effect of the departure and reorganization continued to unfold within Meridian Metrics. Formerly confident managers now second-guessed every decision. The departure of key employees I had quietly observed, Vanessa, Louise, Helena, was felt far more deeply than any public statement could reveal. Teams were working harder, yet uncertainty hung over the offices like a shadow. Client-facing operations struggled subtly, dashboards returned delayed data, predictive analytics misfired occasionally, and internal metrics showed minor inconsistencies. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to erode trust over time. Throughout it all, Harper continued her innovation initiatives in her sandbox. Enthusiastic, ambitious, full of buzzwords, but now disconnected from systems that could no longer support experimental leaps. Errors appeared at a faster rate. Minor misconfigurations compounded. Yet no one called me directly. I observed. Logged issues. Analyzed patterns. Nothing overtly dramatic. But enough to confirm what I had anticipated. Confidence without experience is fragile, and systems built without understanding will falter. In private, I maintained correspondence with trusted partners, quietly advising 3 firms on integrations and cybersecurity. I wasn't building empires, I was maintaining coherence, ensuring that systems continued to function in the absence of oversight, in the face of change. It was satisfying, silent, and precise. Then, one Thursday evening, an email arrived from Vanessa. "They're asking more questions," she wrote. The board had noticed discrepancies in Harper's metrics. Liam's absence was now formalized, he had withdrawn from daily oversight under the guise of strategic fatigue. Rumors of internal leadership resets were circulating. And now, the Executives I had once worked alongside were forced to acknowledge gaps that no training, no bootcamp, no shiny new ideas could fill. I didn't respond directly. I let the events unfold. There was no need. My influence was already evident. Patterns I had set in motion months prior, subtle, calculated, deliberate, were coming to fruition. Harper's team was facing cascading challenges, the kind that start small but grow exponentially when knowledge and experience are missing. The real lesson was unfolding quietly. Systems, like organizations, can be built quickly, polished beautifully, but without a deep understanding of their foundations, they cannot endure. The very people who had replaced me, full of ambition and youth, now faced the structural realities I had mastered over years. And they had no choice but to recognize that. Late that week, I received another message, this time from an old client. "Legacy, yours," the subject line read. The note was short: "You didn't just stabilize the system, you redefined leadership, showing what it means to guide without applause, to influence without visibility." I didn't reply. I saved it. Some legacies aren't loud, they are encoded in silence, in systems that continue to function perfectly even when no one notices. And as I closed my laptop that evening, I reflected, the quiet power of understanding, of knowing how the walls are built, cannot be rushed or faked. It cannot be replaced by buzzwords or charisma. And no amount of flashy innovation can substitute for years of careful, disciplined work. The companies I built, the systems I designed, and the people I quietly guided, these were my true achievements. Recognition was incidental. Continuity was the prize. That summer, I finally allowed myself to step back, but not completely. I didn't vanish, I became exactly what I had always been at my best, the silent architect behind the systems, the steady hand guiding operations without recognition, the quiet force ensuring continuity. My laptop hummed each morning beside the chipped mug from my first year at Meridian Metrics. I logged in, checked logs, skimmed tickets, not because anyone expected me to, but because I cared. The systems ran smoothly, and that was its own reward, the silent proof that years of meticulous effort were paying off. Every routine check, every overlooked alert, every minor anomaly that others would dismiss, I noticed. The board quietly extended my contract another year. Vanessa returned full-time as COO. Louise rejoined on the systems side under a hybrid CTO model. Conversations about loyalty were unnecessary. The focus was on structure, processes, and the people who quietly upheld them. Those who mattered had been seen, included, and valued. Outside observers had no idea of the work happening behind whiteboards, encrypted communications, and countless system checks, but the results spoke for themselves. Every integration ran seamlessly. Predictive models produced consistent, reliable insights. Client dashboards reflected accuracy across platforms. Operational stability returned, not by chance, but by deliberate, patient orchestration. Phoenix Capital's acquisition had concluded, and the transition was flawless. Every handoff, audit, operational checkpoint, and compliance review was meticulously documented. I didn't need recognition, headlines, or public validation. Foundations held firm. Systems functioned as intended. Subtle ripple effects were evident, operational efficiency rose, minor errors disappeared, and teams adapted to reinforced processes built on deep knowledge and experience. I remembered nights spent debugging the first versions of these systems, the countless hours ensuring redundancy and fail-safes, the lessons learned when minor mistakes could have caused total collapse. All of that preparation had culminated in this quiet, unacknowledged victory. Meridian Metrics continued to feel the consequences of structural changes I had implemented. Harper, confident and ambitious, now faced the limitations of her inexperience. Systems she was entrusted with showed subtle fractures, delayed reporting, minor misconfigurations, cascading issues. None catastrophic, but enough to reveal a truth I had long known: confidence without understanding is fragile. Systems built without foundational knowledge inevitably falter. And yet, watching from a distance, I saw her determination, her attempts to assert control. It was admirable in ambition, but reckless without context. From my quiet home office, I maintained correspondence with 3 firms, providing guidance on integrations, cybersecurity, and strategic expansion. There were no all-night crises, no caffeine-fueled firefights. Just structure, clarity, and the satisfaction of maintaining systems designed to endure. I observed patterns, monitored metrics, and occasionally intervened minimally, ensuring operational stability and strategic growth continued undisturbed. Sometimes, I allowed myself a quiet smile, remembering the years of building, the countless unseen decisions that now sustained entire networks and workflows. One Thursday, Vanessa emailed me, "They're asking questions. Metrics are misaligned, and leadership presence is uneven. I didn't respond. Patterns had been set. Results were already unfolding. The ripple effect of deliberate, years-long work now reshaped Meridian metrics without overt intervention. Harper and Liam were confronted with the consequences of assumptions untested by experience. Gaps were undeniable, and lessons unavoidable. Weeks later, Celeste Ramos, an old client, wrote, "Subject, legacy, yours. You didn't just stabilize the system. You redefined leadership, showing that influence without recognition can surpass visibility." I saved the email. Some legacies aren't loud, they exist in the quiet continuity of systems functioning flawlessly, unnoticed, long after the architect steps back. I thought of all the mornings I arrived before anyone else, all the late nights I stayed, all the minor crises averted without fanfare. Those were the real victories. As I closed my laptop that evening, reflection set in. Recognition is fleeting. Headlines fade. Money comes and goes. But expertise, foresight, and disciplined understanding leave an enduring mark. The systems I built, the frameworks I maintained, and the people I quietly guided, these were my true achievements. Applause was incidental. Continuity, stability, and respect for the work itself were the ultimate reward. I watched dashboards run silent, smooth, flawless. I thought, this is the prize. Not wealth. Not fame. Not titles. But knowing the structures I built operate perfectly, enduring through transitions, leadership changes, and ambitious but inexperienced successors. That knowledge, that quiet assurance, is power in its purest form. The calm after the storm, the invisible thread holding everything together, that was my victory. Have you ever been the one quietly keeping everything running, unnoticed, until the moment you step back and see the real gap left behind? That is when the world realizes what matters, not the noise, not flashes of recognition, but systems, structure, and the hands that silently hold everything together. And sometimes, that quiet, patient persistence is the most profound victory one can achieve, the kind that doesn't need applause, headlines, or acknowledgement, because it already changed the game entirely, subtly, flawlessly, and permanently.